Hello and welcome to Health Guide, communicating effectively with healthcare professionals. I'm Leo and I'm excited to kick off this new podcast series with you today.
And I'm Clara. I can't tell you how thrilled I am about this series. We're going to transform the way you talk to doctors and other healthcare providers. It's going to be absolutely life-changing for so many listeners.
That's right. Whether English is your second language or you just find medical terminology confusing, and trust me, you're not alone. We're here to help you navigate those sometimes intimidating healthcare conversations.
Exactly. And today we're starting with episode 1. Building your medical vocabulary foundation. We'll cover essential terms for body parts, how to describe different types of pain and symptoms, and even practice scheduling appointments. It's going to be so empowering.
I remember when I first moved here, I had this terrible sinus infection, and I couldn't properly explain my symptoms to the doctor. I kept saying I had a face pain instead of sinus pressure.
Oh, Leo, but you figured it out eventually. And that's what matters. Everyone starts somewhere. And by the end of our series, our listeners will be confidently discussing their health concerns in English. So let's jump right in.
All right, let's start with our first segment, essential body part terminology. Clara, why do you think this is so important to cover first?
It's the foundation of everything. If you can't identify where the problem is, it's hard to get the right treatment. I think of it like building a house. You need a strong foundation before adding the walls and roof.
Good point. Let's go through the major body systems. We have the cardiovascular system, that's your heart and blood vessels. The respiratory system includes your lungs, bronchial tubes, and everything involved in breathing.
And don't forget the digestive system. That's your stomach, intestines, liver, all the parts that help you process food. Oh, and the musculoskeletal system, which includes all your muscles, bones, and joints. Isn't the human body amazing?
It certainly is. Now, directional terms are also crucial. Medical professionals use terms like proximal, meaning closer to the center of the body, and distal, meaning further away. But for everyday conversations, simply using left, right, upper, and lower is usually sufficient.
Absolutely. And remember, it's always from the patient's perspective. So your left arm is the one on your left side. It seems obvious, but in a stressful medical situation, it's easy to get confused.
Now let's practice pronouncing some challenging anatomical terms. Clara, which ones do you think give people the most trouble?
Oh, definitely words like esophagus. That's the tube food goes down from your throat to your stomach, and thoracic relating to your chest. Let's have listeners repeat after us. Esophagus.
Esophagus and thoracic. Another challenging one is acetaminophen, a common pain reliever also known as Tylenol. Acetaminophen.
Perfect! I just know our listeners are going to master these words in no time. I always tell my friends that learning medical terms is actually fun once you get the hang of it.
Moving on to our second segment, describing pain and discomfort. This is probably one of the most important skills when communicating with healthcare providers.
Absolutely. And it's not just about saying it hurts. There are so many wonderful, specific words we can use to help doctors understand exactly what we're feeling.
Right. Let's cover different types of pain. We have sharp pain, which feels sudden and intense, like being stabbed with a needle. Dull pain is more like a persistent ache that's not as intense.
Throbbing pain pulses, kind of like your heartbeat. Burning pain feels hot, like a burn. Shooting pain travels quickly along a path. Oh, and cramping is that tight, squeezing feeling. See how many options we have? It's fantastic to have such specific vocabulary.
Doctors will often ask you to rate your pain on a scale from 1 to 10, with 1 being barely noticeable and 10 being the worst pain imaginable. This helps them understand the severity.
I remember when I sprained my ankle last year, the doctor asked for my pain level, and I said maybe a 6, but then I realized I needed to be more specific about when it hurt most. It was actually an 8 when I put weight on it, but only a 3 when resting. That detail really helped with my treatment plan.
That's an excellent point, Clara. The temporal aspects of pain are crucial information. Doctors need to know when your symptoms started, how long they last, and how frequently they occur.
Exactly. Use phrases like the pain started 3 days ago, or it comes and go throughout the day, or it's constant but gets worse after eating. Being specific about timing is super helpful for a diagnosis.
Let's move on to our third segment, common symptoms beyond pain, because health concerns aren't always about pain, right?
Right. There are so many other important symptoms to describe. Take respiratory symptoms, things like coughing, shortness of breath, wheezing. When describing a cough, you can specify if it's dry or productive. A productive cough means you're coughing up mucus or phlegm.
And with shortness of breath, you might want to explain if it happens when you're active or even at rest. Does it make it hard to speak in complete sentences? These details matter.
For digestive symptoms, we have terms like nausea, that's when you feel sick to your stomach, vomiting is throwing up, and diarrhea is loose, watery stools. I know these aren't pleasant topics, but being able to talk about them clearly is so important for your health.
Absolutely. No need to be embarrassed. Doctors hear these terms all day. Then we have neurological symptoms like dizziness, which can mean feeling lightheaded or like the room is spinning. That specific spinning sensation is called vertigo.
And don't forget headaches. You can describe where the pain is like at your temples, behind your eyes, or at the base of your skull. And fatigue is more than just being tired. It's that bone-deep exhaustion that rest doesn't seem to fix. I experienced that when I had mono in college, and it was so hard to describe until I learned the right words.
That's a good point. Having the right words helps you get the right diagnosis. And speaking of which, let's practice some phrases. I've been experiencing shortness of breath when climbing stairs. I've had diarrhea for 3 days. I feel busy when I stand up quickly.
Those are perfect examples, Leo. Remember, listeners, be specific about when symptoms occur and what makes them better or worse. Your healthcare provider will be so impressed with your clear communication.
Now let's talk about navigating appointment scheduling. This might seem basic, but it can be challenging, especially over the phone.
Oh, phone calls can be tricky, but I always say preparation is key to success. If you practice these phrases beforehand, you'll feel so much more confident when making that call.
For making appointments, you can say, I'd like to schedule an appointment with Dr. Smith, or I need to see a doctor about my persistent cough.
And if you need to change an appointment, I need to reschedule my appointment on Friday. For cancellations, I need to cancel my appointment scheduled for June 15th. Always try to give as much notice as possible. It's just good manners, and they can give your slot to someone who might really need it.
Exactly. You should also be familiar with common office terminology. The receptionist might ask about your date of birth and insurance provider. They might tell you about copays. That's the amount you pay at the time of service.
And don't forget to ask if you need to do anything to prepare for your appointment. Sometimes you might need to fast before blood work or bring certain records. Being proactive about these details makes everything go so much smoother.
It's also important to know how to explain urgency appropriately. If something is truly an emergency, don't wait for an appointment, go to the emergency room. But if it's urgent but not an emergency, you can say, I'm in significant discomfort and would like to be seen as soon as possible.
Yes, and most medical offices have systems for urgent cases. They might offer same-day appointments or direct you to an urgent care facility if they can't fit you in. The key is communicating your needs clearly but politely. I always find that a friendly tone works wonders, even when I'm not feeling my best.
Let's move to our final segment, practice scenario. We'll roleplay a phone call to schedule an appointment. I'll be the patient, and Clara, you can be the receptionist.
Sounds great. I'll try to channel my inner medical receptionist. Ready when you are.
Hey, ring, ring. Hello, I'd like to make an appointment to see Dr. Johnson. I've been having some persistent stomach pain for the past week.
Good morning. I'd be happy to help you schedule that appointment. May I have your name and date of birth, please?
My name is Leo Smith, and my date of birth is March 15th, 1982.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Are you an established patient with Dr. Johnson, or would this be your first visit?
This would be my first time seeing Dr. Johnson. I was referred by my previous doctor, Dr. Garcia.
I see. As a new patient, we'll need to collect some additional information. Do you have your insurance card available?
Yes, I do. I have Health Plus insurance, and my member ID is ABC 123456.
Perfect. Now, you mentioned stomach pain. Can you tell me a bit more about your symptoms so I can determine the urgency of your appointment?
I've been experiencing a dull pain in my upper abdomen, especially after eating. I haven't had any vomiting or fever, but the pain has been getting more noticeable over the past few days.
Thank you for that information. Let me see what we have available. We could see you next Tuesday at 10:30 a.m. or Thursday at 2:15 p.m. Would either of those work for you?
Tuesday at 10:30 would work well for me.
Great. I've got you scheduled for Tuesday at 10:30 a.m. with Dr. Johnson. Please arrive 15 minutes early to complete new patient paperwork, or you can find the forms on our website to fill out in advance. Also, please bring your insurance card and a list of any medications you're currently taking.
Thank you. I'll be there at 10:15, and I'll bring everything you mentioned.
Wonderful! We look forward to seeing you on Tuesday. If your symptoms worsen before then, please don't hesitate to call us back. Do you have any other questions?
No, that's all. Thank you for your help.
You're very welcome. Have a great day. And scene. That was fun.
That was a good example of how a typical appointment scheduling call might go. Notice how I provided specific details about my symptoms when asked, which helped determine how soon I needed to be seen.
Absolutely. And I asked follow-up questions about the symptoms, which is common. Remember, everyone, medical offices need to prioritize patients based on the urgency of their conditions. So being clear about your symptoms is super important.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground in this first episode. We talked about essential body part terminology, how to describe different types of pain and symptoms, and even practice scheduling an appointment.
We sure did, and I'm already excited about our next episode. We're going to build on this foundation and dive into the medical interview, telling your health story. That's where all these wonderful vocabulary words we learned today will really come into play.
Exactly. We'll cover how to present your medical history, discuss current medications, and describe your symptoms in a narrative that helps your doctor understand your situation clearly.
I can't wait. The medical interview is where the magic happens, when you and your doctor work together to solve the puzzle of your health concerns. With the right communication skills, you'll be an active partner in your healthcare journey.
Before we go, let's recap key points from today. Remember to be specific when describing pain. Is it sharp, dull, throbbing? Use the pain scale from 1 to 10 and be clear about when symptoms started and how they've changed.
And don't forget to learn those basic body part terms. It makes such a difference when you can point to our abdomen instead of just saying, my stomach hurts. Also, practice those appointment-making phrases before you call. A little preparation goes a long way.
Thank you for joining us for this first episode of Health Guide. We'd love to hear your thoughts and questions. You can reach us through our website at healthguidepodcast.com.
And if you found this episode helpful, please share it with friends or family who might benefit. Everyone deserves to feel confident when talking about their health. Join us next time for episode 2, the medical interview, telling your health story. It's going to be absolutely fantastic.
Until then, take care and stay healthy.
Bye, everyone. Remember, good communication leads to better healthcare, and that's something to smile about.
Before we dive in, let me give you all a quick overview of what Health Insights is all about. In this 6-part series, we'll be exploring common health concerns that many of us face, but with a unique focus on the language we use to talk about these issues.
That's right. We'll cover everything from digestive issues to skin problems, respiratory infections, and mental health. And we'll look at how English speakers talk about these topics, the idioms, the phrasal verbs, the vocabulary. It's going to be so fascinating.
Today's episode focuses on digestive health, which might not sound like the most glamorous topic.
But it affects literally everyone. Our digestive systems are amazing, and understanding how to talk about them clearly is such an important skill, especially when we need to communicate with healthcare providers.
Exactly. Plus, there's a surprising amount of colorful language associated with our digestive systems.
Absolutely. I can't wait to get started. There's so much to learn and explore, and I just know our listeners are going to find this incredibly useful in their daily lives.
Let's start with our first segment, the gut feeling, basic digestive anatomy vocabulary. Before we talk about problems, we should know the parts, right?
Definitely. And surprisingly, the digestive system is way more than just your stomach. It's this amazing pathway that starts at your mouth and ends at, well, the other end.
Right. So basic anatomy terms include the esophagus, which is the tube that food travels down after swallowing, the stomach, where food gets mixed with digestive juices, the small intestine, where most nutrient absorption happens, and the large intestine, or colon, where water is absorbed and waste is solidified.
Don't forget the liver, gallbladder, and pancreas. They're like the support team, adding important digestive juices to help break everything down. I actually did an immersion course last summer, and I was amazed at how complex this whole system is.
When talking to doctors, we often need to specify where pain or discomfort is located. That's where terms like upper abdomen versus lower abdomen come in handy.
Oh, that's so important. Upper abdomen generally refers to the area right below your ribs, while lower abdomen is the area toward your pelvis. Being specific helps doctors narrow down what might be going on.
There's also a difference between formal medical terms and the everyday language we use. Like, doctors might say defecate or have a bowel movement, while most people just say
poop or go to the bathroom. There's so many euphemisms because people often feel uncomfortable with direct language about digestive functions. But I always think it's natural. Everyone does it. No need for embarrassment.
You would say that, Clara? I still remember when you gave that impromptu speech about digestive health at my birthday dinner last year.
Well, your mom asked why I wasn't having the spicy food. I was just being honest about my sensitive stomach. And hey, your cousin said it was the most educational birthday dinner she'd ever attended.
Moving on to our next segment, stomach troubles, expressing digestive symptoms. This is where knowing the right words becomes really important, especially when you're trying to explain to a doctor what's wrong.
Absolutely. And there are so many specific words to describe different sensations, like nausea, that queasy feeling when you think you might throw up, or heartburn, which is that burning feeling in your chest or throat.
Then there's bloating, when your abdomen feels swollen or tight, constipation, when you can't go to the bathroom easily, and diarrhea, when stools are loose and watery.
Don't forget about gas, which can cause uncomfortable feelings like being gassy or flatulent. Oh, and indigestion, that general discomfort after eating. I actually find that taking a nice walk after big meals helps me avoid that feeling entirely.
There are also lots of phrasal verbs related to digestive issues. Throw up or bring up mean to vomit. Keeps down refers to being able to eat without vomiting, as in, I couldn't keep my breakfast down.
And phrases like pass gas or break wind are more polite ways to talk about flatulence. English really does have a phrase for everything.
When describing pain to a doctor, intensity matters too. There's a difference between mild discomfort, moderate pain, and severe or intense pain.
And the quality of the pain matters too. Is it sharp, dull, cramping, burning? These distinctions can help doctors figure out what's going on. I always try to be super specific when I'm not feeling well. It makes the process so much smoother.
And now for one of my favorite segments, What's Eating You? Idioms for digestive issues. English is full of idioms related to the digestive system, and many of them have extended meanings beyond literal digestive problems.
Oh, I love this part, like butterflies in your stomach, that fluttery, nervous feeling you get before doing something scary or exciting. I had those before we started recording today, but they were definitely the good kind.
Of course you did. There's also gut feeling or gut instinct, which refers to an intuitive sense about something without logical reasoning.
That's such a common one. I'm a huge believer in trusting your gut feeling. Mine has rarely steered me wrong.
Then we have metaphorical expressions like can't stomach something, meaning you can't tolerate or endure it, or hard to swallow, which means difficult to accept or believe.
And to have the stomach for something, meaning you have the courage or determination for a difficult task. Like, do you have the stomach for bungee jumping? Which I absolutely do. I went last summer and it was amazing.
Some of these idioms have interesting historical origins. Gut-wrenching, for example, describes something extremely distressing. It comes from the physical sensation of extreme distress that can literally feel like your insides are being twisted.
That's fascinating. And there's also spill your guts, which means to confess or reveal everything, especially secrets. I love how these expressions paint such vivid pictures.
Let's move on to our next segment, talking to your doctor, effective communication. This might be the most practical part of today's episode.
Definitely. Being able to clearly articulate what's wrong is so important. I always try to prepare before doctor appointments by thinking about when my symptoms started, what makes them better or worse, and how they're affecting my daily life.
That's a good approach. Doctors often ask diagnostic questions like, when did the symptoms begin? Is the pain constant or intermittent? Does anything trigger your symptoms or make them worse?
And they might ask about associated symptoms like, do you also have fever, fatigue, or changes in appetite? Being prepared with this information can really help get to the bottom of what's happening faster.
Sometimes medical terminology can be confusing. It's always okay to ask for clarification if you don't understand something your doctor says.
Absolutely. I never hesitate to ask questions. Phrases like, could you explain that in simpler terms? Or what exactly does that mean? Are totally appropriate. Doctors want you to understand your health.
It can also help to repeat back what you've understood to make sure you've got it right. Like, so if I'm understanding correctly, you want me to take this medication twice a day with food?
That's such a good tip. I actually do that all the time, not just with doctors, but in all important conversations. It prevents so many misunderstandings. And I always leave feeling confident that I know exactly what to do next for my health.
Our final segment today is treatment talk, understanding medical advice. Once you've described your symptoms and received a diagnosis, understanding treatment instructions is crucial.
So true. And there's specific vocabulary for different treatments, like antacids for heartburn, anti-nausea medication for nausea, or laxatives for constipation.
Doctors also use specific terms when giving dietary advice. They might tell you to eliminate certain foods from your diet to see if they're causing problems.
Or to introduce foods one at a time to identify what might be triggering symptoms. I had to do an elimination diet once for some digestive issues, and it was challenging, but so worth it. I discovered that dairy was causing a lot of my problems.
They might also talk about trigger foods items that tend to cause symptoms for you specifically. Common triggers for digestive issues include spicy foods, fatty foods, caffeine, and alcohol, but it varies from person to person.
And when it comes to medication, understanding how to take it properly is super important. Terms like with food, on an empty stomach, before meals, or after meals can make a big difference in how effective the medicine is.
Following up with your doctor is also important. You need to be able to report whether your condition is improving or deteriorating. Words like resolved, improved, unchanged, or worsened help describe your progress.
I always keep a little symptom journal when I'm trying a new treatment. That way I can give really specific feedback instead of just general impressions. Tracking your health can be so empowering.
Well, that brings us to the end of our first episode of Health Insights. We've covered a lot about digestive health language today.
We sure have. From basic anatomy terms to symptom descriptions, idioms, effective doctor communication, and treatment vocabulary. I hope everyone feels more equipped to talk about digestive issues now.
To recap some key points, be specific when describing symptoms, learn the right vocabulary for your condition, don't be afraid to ask for clarification, and make sure you understand treatment instructions.
And remember, everyone experiences digestive issues sometimes. There's no need to feel embarrassed when talking to healthcare providers. Being open and accurate about your symptoms is the fastest path to feeling better.
We created this podcast to help non-native English speakers navigate those tricky medical conversations. Because let's face it, trying to describe health issues in another language can be pretty challenging.
Absolutely. I remember when I first moved to the US and had to visit a doctor for a terrible migraine. I couldn't remember the word throbbing and ended up saying my head was boom, boom, boom. The doctor was so patient, but I felt so frustrated.
That's exactly why we're here, to give our listeners the vocabulary and confidence they need. And today's topic is perfect to start with, describing pain and discomfort.
Yes. Being able to accurately describe pain is probably one of the most important skills when communicating with healthcare providers. Throughout this series, we'll cover everything from common symptoms to emergency situations.
And we'll explore cultural aspects of medical communication too. But for today, let's focus on getting those pain descriptions just right. Ready to dive in?
Absolutely. Let's help our listeners find their voice when it really matters.
All right, let's start with the different types of pain. This is so important because the kind of pain you're experiencing can help doctors figure out what's going on.
Exactly. And there are so many ways to describe pain in English. It's not just, it hurts. We can be much more specific.
Right. So let's break it down. There's sharp pain, which feels like something sharp is stabbing you.
Then there's dull pain, which is less intense, but might be constant. It's more of an ache, like the soreness you feel after exercising too much.
Oh, I'm familiar with that one. After my weekend hikes, my legs definitely have that dull ache. Then we have throbbing pain, which has a pulsing quality to it.
Exactly. Like when you have a really bad headache and you can feel your heartbeat in your temples. And don't forget burning pain, which feels hot or like something is, burning.
You know what's interesting? I was reading on Engvid that in English, we use both pain and ache, but they feel a bit different. Like you might say, I have a headache or I have a toothache.
That's true. And according to that same source, when you use the word pain, it usually refers to a different sensation than an ache. Like, I had a sharp pain in my back versus I have a backache.
Perfect example. The word hurt is common to use too. My throat hurts or my knee hurts when I bend it.
Let's practice pronouncing some of these terms that might be tricky for non-native speakers. Repeat after us. Throbbing.
Throbbing. And now, persistent.
Persistent. And one more. Excruciating.
Excruciating. That's a tough one. It means extremely painful. I once had a kidney stone. Now that was excruciating pain.
Now that we've covered the types of pain, let's talk about describing pain intensity. This is super important for helping doctors understand how serious your condition might be.
Absolutely. And most healthcare providers in English-speaking countries use what's called the pain scale, usually from 1 to 10.
Right, where 1 is very mild pain and 10 is the worst pain imaginable.
I've always found that scale a bit tricky though. Like, how do I know what a 7 feels like versus an 8?
That's a great point. It can be subjective, but there are some helpful phrases you can use. For mild pain, you might say it's slight or minor, maybe a 1 to 3 on the scale.
And for moderate pain, around 4 to 6, you could describe it as uncomfortable or distracting.
Then for severe pain, 7 and above, words like intense, severe, or unbearable would be appropriate.
Don't forget useful phrases like it comes and goes for intermittent pain or it's constant for pain that doesn't stop.
Ooh, let's do a quick sample dialogue. I'll be the doctor, you be the patient.
Perfect. I'm ready.
So can you describe the pain you're experiencing?
Well, it's a sharp pain in my lower abdomen. It comes and goes, but when it comes, it's really intense, probably an 8 out of 10.
I see. And how long does the pain last when it occurs?
Usually about 20 minutes. Then it subsides to a dull ache that's maybe a 3 or 4.
Great example. Notice how specific Leo was about the type, intensity, and pattern of the pain. That gives the doctor valuable information.
Now let's move on to something equally important, locating pain. Being able to tell your doctor exactly where you feel discomfort is crucial.
Absolutely, and for this you need vocabulary for different body parts and regions.
Right. Let's start with some basic anatomy. We have the head, neck, chest, abdomen or stomach area, back, and limbs, which include your arms and legs.
And we can get more specific, like the forehead, temples, or scalp for different parts of the head, or the upper, middle, or lower back.
For the abdomen, you might need to specify if it's on the right side, left side, or center. Same goes for chest pain. Is it centered on the left or on the right?
Prepositions are really helpful here too, like behind my eye, under my ribs, or between my shoulder blades.
Those are great examples. And don't forget, sometimes pain radiates or moves from one area to another. So you might say, the pain starts in my lower back and radiates down my right leg.
That's exactly right. I had sciatica last year, and that's precisely how I had to describe it to my doctor. The pain was radiating from my lower back all the way down to my foot. It was not fun.
Oh no, that sounds awful. I hope you're better now.
Much better, thanks. Proper physical therapy worked wonders, but it really taught me the importance of being able to describe exactly where and how pain travels.
Let's talk about timing and patterns of pain. This can give doctors crucial information about what might be causing your symptoms.
Definitely. When did the pain start? How long does it last? Does it follow any patterns? These are all important questions.
For timing, you might need phrases like since yesterday, for the past week, or it started suddenly about an hour ago.
And for frequency, words like occasionally, constantly, periodically, or intermittently are really useful. I remember when I had those terrible tension headaches in college, I had to explain that they occurred almost daily, usually in the late afternoon.
That sounds rough. Did you figure out what was triggering them?
Actually, yes. And that brings up a good point. Describing pain triggers and relieving factors is super helpful for your healthcare provider.
Right. You might say something like, the pain gets worse when I bend over, or it improves when I lie down.
Or it only happens after I eat dairy products, or taking a hot shower seems to relieve it temporarily.
Exactly. And describing the onset can be important too. Did it develop gradually over days or weeks, or did it come on suddenly?
Good point. Gradual onset versus sudden onset can be significant clues for diagnosis.
Okay, now let's pull everything together with a role play of a complete doctor's office visit. This will show how to use all these pain description techniques in context.
Great idea. I'll be Dr. Williams, and you can be the patient, Mr. Lee.
Sounds good. And I'll be experiencing some kind of back pain in this scenario.
Hello, Mr. Lee. What brings you in today?
Hi, Dr. Williams. I've been having some back pain for about 2 weeks now.
I'm sorry to hear that. Can you describe the pain for me?
It's a, dull, aching pain in my lower back, mostly on the right side. Sometimes it gets sharp, especially when I bend over or try to lift something.
And on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the worst pain imaginable, how would you rate it?
Most of the time it's about a 3 or 4, but when it gets sharp, it spikes to maybe a 7 or 8. Those moments really take my breath away.
I understand. Does the pain stay in your lower back, or does it move to other areas?
Sometimes it radiates down the back of my right leg, all the way to my calf. That mostly happens after I've been sitting for a long time.
I see. And what makes the pain better or worse?
It definitely gets worse when I sit for too long or first thing in the morning. It seems better when I walk around a bit or apply a heating pad.
Have you noticed any other symptoms along with the back pain?
No, not really. Just the pain and some stiffness in my lower back.
Great, thank you for that detailed description. Based on what you've told me, I'd like to examine your back and possibly order some tests to determine what's causing your pain.
That was a really thorough example. Notice how I described the type of pain, intensity, location, radiation, timing, and factors that make it better or worse. All of these details help the doctor understand what might be happening.
Exactly. And notice the questions I ask as the doctor. These are typical questions healthcare providers might ask about your pain, so it's good to be prepared for them. Before we wrap up, let's talk about some of the key pronunciation tips for medical terms related to pain and discomfort. These can sometimes be tricky.
Definitely. Words like chronic with that CH sound pronounced as K, not CH, as in chair.
Good one. And ache is pronounced like ache, which can be confusing since the spelling doesn't match the pronunciation.
Right. And speaking of spelling versus pronunciation, let's not forget the subtle differences between American and British English. According to our sources, Americans tend to say sick, where British English speakers might say ill.
That's a great point, Leo. Both mean the same thing, but it's one of those regional differences to be aware of.
Another tricky word is nausea, pronounced nausea, or nausea, or nausea, not nasi.
And don't forget about stress patterns in longer medical terms like appendicitis, where the stress is on appendicitis.
These pronunciation tips are so helpful. I still remember stumbling over medical terms when I first moved here. I couldn't pronounce rheumatologist to save my life.
It's a tough one, rheumatologist. But remember, everyone, the most important thing isn't perfect pronunciation, it's being understood. Most healthcare providers are used to working with patients from diverse backgrounds.
Well, that brings us to the end of our first episode of English Speak Medical Communication. Let's recap what we've covered today.
We learned about the different types of pain, sharp, dull, throbbing, and burning, and how to describe them accurately.
We discussed pain intensity using the 1 to 10 scale and helpful adjectives like mild, moderate, and severe.
We covered vocabulary for locating pain precisely on the body and using prepositions to describe exactly where it hurts.
And we explored how to describe the timing and patterns of pain, including onset, duration, frequency, and triggers.
Finally, we put it all together with a sample doctor's visit dialogue and shared some pronunciation tips for tricky medical terms.
Next time on English Speak Medical Communication, we'll be discussing describing common symptoms and conditions. We'll cover vocabulary for respiratory issues, digestive problems, fever, and more.
That's going to be another really practical episode. We'll help you describe everything from a cough to a rash to dizziness. So make sure to tune in.
Until then, keep practicing these pain description techniques. Maybe try describing a past pain experience you've had using the vocabulary we covered today.
That's a great suggestion. And if you found this episode helpful, please share it with friends or family who might benefit. Remember, being able to communicate effectively about health concerns is so important. This 6-part series is going to take us on quite a journey through the language we use to describe our inner experiences. And today's episode, The Vocabulary of Distress, is all about the common expressions we use to talk about anxiety, stress, and emotional struggles.
Yeah, like when I tell you I've got butterflies in my stomach before recording, or how I was losing my mind trying to find parking this morning.
Exactly. Those phrases are so embedded in our language that we barely think about what they're actually saying about our understanding of mental states. And that's what we're going to unpack today.
I've got to say, when you first pitched this series to me, I was like, this sounds really academic, but then I realized how much this stuff affects us every day. I mean, just yesterday, my neighbor said she was at her breaking point with her renovation project.
And that's precisely the kind of expression we'll be examining. So let's dive right in. All right, so our first segment today is all about the language of anxiety. Phrases like butterflies in my stomach, cold feet, tied up in knots, they all describe anxiety through physical sensations.
Oh yeah, I definitely feel those butterflies before we go live. It's wild how these physical metaphors just make sense, you know? Like my stomach literally feels fluttery when I'm nervous.
That's because there's a real physiological basis for these expressions. Anxiety activates our sympathetic nervous system fight or flight response, which affects our digestive tract. So those butterflies are actually your body diverting blood away from your digestive system to prepare for a threat.
You know what I've always wondered about that? Do people in other cultures use the same metaphors? Like, do people in Japan talk about butterflies in their stomachs?
That's a great question. While the physical sensations of anxiety are universal, the metaphors do vary across cultures. In some East Asian cultures, anxiety might be described as having a lot on your chest rather than in your stomach. In Persian, there's an expression about anxiety causing your heart to fall, which is similar to our "my heart sank."
That's fascinating. Oh, speaking of hearts, my sister always says her heart is racing when she's anxious, which is totally different from butterflies.
Exactly. We have this rich vocabulary of physical metaphors for anxiety because it's such a physical experience. But there's something important happening with these expressions. They often minimize or normalize anxiety. When someone says they have butterflies, it sounds kind of cute and temporary, not like they might be experiencing debilitating anxiety.
I never thought about it that way. I guess saying I'm having a panic attack carries a lot more weight than I've got jitters.
Precisely. And according to research on emotional granularity, which is basically how specifically we can identify our emotions, finding the right words for our feelings is actually critical to our mental wellness. Using vague or cutesy terms might prevent us from addressing serious anxiety.
So knowing the difference between I'm a little nervous versus I'm experiencing crippling anxiety really matters for getting help? That makes a lot of sense.
Let's move on to our next segment, breaking down metaphors of stress. These are expressions like reaching my breaking point, burned out, or falling apart.
Oh man, I was literally telling my girlfriend last night that I was running on fumes with this project deadline coming up. We really do talk about ourselves like machines, don't we?
We absolutely do. Many of our stress metaphors come from mechanical or physical objects. We snap, we crack under pressure, we break down, as if the human mind is some kind of machine or structure that can physically fail.
Right, and then we need to recharge our batteries or blow off steam. I feel like I picked up a lot of these phrases from my dad. He was always talking about hitting the wall when he was overworked.
That's a great observation about intergenerational language patterns. These mechanical metaphors became really prominent during the Industrial Revolution. When machines were the dominant new technology, people started to conceptualize their minds and bodies as machines that could wear out or break down.
So we're still using industrial age language to talk about our very modern stress? That's kind of wild.
It is, and it's interesting to think about how these metaphors shape our understanding of stress and recovery. If I think of myself as broken down, the logical next step is to fix myself rather than perhaps care for myself or adapt to my circumstances.
Yeah, that hits home. When I was going through a really tough time last year, I kept saying I needed to fix my head rather than just acknowledging I was going through something difficult and needed support.
Exactly. The mechanical metaphors can sometimes lead us to think of mental health as a binary state, either working or broken, rather than the complex, fluctuating continuum that it actually is. Now let's talk about all the pressure metaphors we use. Our pressure cooker society segment, we're under pressure, feeling the heat, about to blow our top.
Oh yeah, I'm feeling that pressure valve imagery. When my boss piles on too many assignments, I definitely feel like I'm going to explode if I don't get a release.
These pressure metaphors are fascinating because they directly connect to the industrial age we were just talking about. The steam engine and pressure valve were revolutionary technologies, and they gave us a whole vocabulary for talking about stress and release.
I never made that connection before. So when I say I need to blow off steam after a tough day, I'm basically comparing myself to an old-timey locomotive?
In a way, yes, and these expressions reflect certain values in our society, namely that pressure is normal and expected, but you need occasional release to prevent catastrophic failure. It's not about avoiding pressure altogether.
That's so true. No one ever says I should have no pressure in my life. It's always about managing it, releasing it, or channeling it productively.
Exactly. And it's worth considering how these metaphors might affect our approach to mental health. If we see stress as inevitable pressure that builds up, we might focus more on short-term release valves like drinking or binge-watching TV, rather than addressing the sources of pressure.
Oof, you just called out my entire Friday night routine, Clara.
I'm not judging, but research does show that people who develop acceptance of unwelcome experiences and find more precise ways to label their emotions tend to have higher life satisfaction and less distress. So maybe thinking beyond the pressure valve metaphor could be helpful.
That reminds me of this yoga instructor I had who was always talking about sitting with the discomfort instead of trying to escape it. I thought it was kind of woo-woo at the time, but maybe she was onto something.
There's definitely growing evidence supporting that approach. The psychology literature suggests that accepting difficult emotions rather than trying to immediately relieve them often leads to better long-term outcomes. Let's move on to our next segment, euphemisms and avoidance. These are the vague, indirect ways we talk about mental health challenges.
Oh, like when people say they're not feeling themselves or going through a rough patch instead of saying they're depressed?
Exactly. Or I'm just stressed when they're experiencing severe anxiety, or I'm fine when they're clearly struggling. These euphemisms serve a social function. They signal distress without forcing others to directly engage with something potentially uncomfortable.
I do that all the time. Just yesterday, someone asked how I was doing with the deadline for this episode, and I said, oh, hanging in there, when actually I was freaking out internally.
And why do you think you did that?
I guess I didn't want to burden them. Or maybe I didn't want to seem like I couldn't handle my job. Actually, now that I think about it, I was grabbing coffee and didn't want to get into a whole thing with the barista about my work stress.
All valid reasons. Euphemisms help us navigate social situations smoothly, but they can become problematic when they prevent us from acknowledging the severity of our own or others' mental health challenges.
Like when my college roommate said he was just in a funk but was actually severely depressed and needed professional help.
That's a perfect example. According to research, finding more precise labels for our emotions is actually critical to wellness. So while euphemisms have their place, they can sometimes delay proper understanding and treatment.
I've noticed doctors do this too. When my mom was diagnosed with heart failure, the doctor kept using terms like heart dysfunction instead. It was confusing at first, but I think he was trying to prevent her from panicking.
That's a great observation, Leo. Medical professionals are increasingly aware of how diagnostic language affects patients. One study showed that 39% of patients suffered psychological distress after receiving a breast cancer diagnosis, and healthcare providers are now more mindful about the words they use. That physician was likely trying to prevent your mom from thinking her heart had completely stopped working, which failure might suggest.
That makes sense. It's just interesting how we all dance around difficult topics with our word choices.
Our final segment today is about reclaiming distress language, how we're developing more accurate and empowering ways to talk about mental health challenges.
Are we talking about newer terms like neurodivergent and stuff like that?
That's part of it, yes. There's been a significant shift in how newer generations talk about mental health. Rather than hiding behind euphemisms, many people are now directly discussing their experiences with anxiety, depression, and other conditions.
I've definitely noticed that with my younger cousins. They'll straight up tell you they're having an anxiety attack or that they're dissociating. When I was their age, I would have just said I was freaking out or spaced out.
Exactly. And there's a movement toward understanding these experiences as responses to circumstances rather than just biological disorders. The power threat meaning framework, introduced by the British Psychological Society in 2018, suggests that instead of asking what's wrong with you, we should ask what happened to you.
You know what I've always wondered about that? Do you think social media has played a role in this change? Because I see so many TikToks and Instagram posts about mental health now.
Absolutely. Social media has democratized the language of mental health in unprecedented ways. People are sharing their experiences, learning clinical terms, and creating new expressions that resonate with their experiences.
Like doom scrolling or main character energy?
Exactly. These new terms help people articulate experiences that might not have had names before. And research shows that emotional granularity, having specific words for our feelings, is associated with better mental health outcomes.
So basically, the more precisely we can talk about our mental health, the better we can address it.
That's it in a nutshell. When we move beyond vague terms like stressed to more specific descriptions of our experiences, we gain better insight into what we're feeling and what might help.
That makes me think about my therapy sessions, actually. My therapist is always pushing me to be more specific about exactly what I'm feeling rather than just saying bad or anxious.
Your therapist is applying this principle directly. By expanding your emotional vocabulary, you're gaining tools to better understand and manage your mental health. As we wrap up this first episode, I want to emphasize how much our language both reflects and shapes our understanding of mental health. The metaphors, euphemisms, and terms we use aren't just words. They influence how we conceptualize our experiences and the actions we take.
Yeah, I'm honestly going to be way more aware of how I talk about feeling stressed or anxious after this conversation. It's kind of amazing how many industrial and mechanical metaphors I use without even thinking about it.
It's so embedded in our culture, and as we've discussed, there's real value in developing a richer, more precise vocabulary for our inner experiences. Research consistently shows that people who can precisely label their emotions have better mental health outcomes.
So no more, I'm fine when I'm actually having a terrible day.
Well, there's still a time and place for social niceties, but being able to recognize and name what you're actually experiencing, even just for yourself, can make a big difference.
This whole conversation reminds me of that time we were preparing for our interview with that linguistics professor, and you spent 3 hours making me practice saying phenomenological correctly.
And you still pronounced it wrong on air, but seriously, I hope listeners take away the idea that the words we choose matter.
Life's too short for nerves. Each new beginning is an opportunity to grow and transform. And speaking of transformation, that's exactly what regular exercise can do for both your body and mind.
That's actually a perfect segue into what our podcast series is all about. Over the next 6 episodes, we'll be covering everything from the basics of fitness to specialized topics like cardio, strength training, flexibility, and the mental health benefits of exercise.
And today we're laying the groundwork with the foundations of fitness. We'll be talking about the core components of fitness, how to start safely, setting realistic goals, and creating sustainable habits that actually stick.
Let's dive right into our first segment, understanding fitness components. When most people think about fitness, they might just picture someone with muscles or someone who can run a marathon, but it's actually much more comprehensive than that.
Absolutely. Fitness is like this beautiful, multifaceted gem with 5 main components that all work together in harmony. I love how interconnected they all are.
Those 5 components are cardiovascular endurance, muscular strength, muscular endurance, flexibility, and body composition. Let's break them down. Cardiovascular endurance refers to how efficiently your heart and lungs supply oxygen to your body during sustained physical activity.
Which is why I feel so amazing after my morning runs. That heart-pumping sensation is literally making my cardiovascular system stronger every day. Then there's muscular strength, the amount of force your muscles can generate, and muscular endurance, which is how long your muscles can keep working without fatigue.
Right. And then flexibility is the range of motion in your joints and muscles. You know, I've always struggled with touching my toes. My hamstrings are just perpetually tight.
But that's the beauty of focusing on all components, Clara. With consistent stretching, you'll get there. I used to not even reach my ankles, and now I can put my palms flat on the ground. The human body is amazing at adapting when we give it the right stimuli.
I admire your optimism, though I've been trying to touch my toes for about a decade now. The last component is body composition, the ratio of fat mass to lean mass in your body.
And the wonderful thing about these components is that they all support each other. When you improve your cardiovascular endurance, you can train longer to build muscular endurance. When you increase flexibility, you can perform strength exercises through a fuller range of motion for better results.
That's a good point. Neglecting any one component can create imbalances that might lead to injury or plateau your progress. For example, if you only focus on strength but ignore flexibility, you might end up with tight muscles that limit your movement patterns.
Exactly. That's why I'm such a fan of varied workouts. Monday might be strength training, Tuesday could be a nice long run, Wednesday some yoga for flexibility. Every day is an opportunity to nurture a different aspect of fitness.
Now that we understand the components of fitness, let's talk about how to get started safely, which is crucial, especially for beginners.
Safety first, always. I'm a huge believer that every fitness journey should begin with a quick health check. It's not about finding reasons not to exercise, it's about making sure you're set up for success from day one.
Definitely. For most healthy adults under 40, a simple PRQ questionnaire might be sufficient. That stands for Physical Activity Readiness Questionnaire. But if you're over 40, have existing health conditions, or have been sedentary for a long time, consulting with a healthcare provider before starting a new exercise program is recommended.
And once you get that green light, warming up properly is your next best friend. I cannot stress enough how transformative a good 5 to 10 minute warm-up has been for my workouts. It increases blood flow to the muscles, raises your body temperature slightly, and mentally prepares you for the activity ahead.
What does your typical warm-up look like, Leo?
I start with some light cardio, maybe a brisk walk that transitions into a slow jog to get my heart rate up. Then I do some dynamic stresses like arm circles, leg swings, and hip rotations. Nothing too intense, just enough to wake up those movement patterns I'll be using in my main workout. What about you, Clara?
Mine's similar, though I tend to focus more on the specific body parts I'll be working that day. And I've learned the hard way about the importance of cooling down, too. I once skipped my cool down after a particularly intense leg workout and could barely walk downstairs the next day.
Oh, but even that soreness is just your body saying, hey, I'm changing and getting stronger. But yes, cooling down is equally important. Gentle stretching helps return your muscles to their resting length and can definitely reduce that post-workout stiffness.
Something else we should mention about safety is form. Proper form prevents injuries and ensures you're actually targeting the intended muscles. I've seen people at the gym lifting weights with their backs arched or knees caving in, and I just want to run over and help them.
I know exactly what you mean. I actually did approach someone once, very respectfully, of course, and they were so grateful for the tip. Now we're workout buddies, but for beginners especially, it might be worth investing in at least one session with a qualified trainer to learn proper form, or even following reputable instructional videos online.
And finally, remember that gradual progression is key. Your body needs time to adapt to new stresses. The 10% rule is a good guideline. Try not to increase your workout duration, frequency, or intensity by more than 10% per week.
Yes! Patience yields the best long-term results. I remember when I first started running, I tried to double my distance in just 1 week and ended up with shin splints. But that taught me the valuable lesson of progressive overload, challenging your body just enough to improve, but not so much that you risk injury. Every setback is a setup for a comeback.
Let's move on to setting smart fitness goals. Having clear objectives is what transforms vague intentions like get fit into actual results. SMART stands for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound.
I absolutely love the SMART framework. It's completely transformed how I approach not just fitness, but really any goal in my life. When you make your goals crystal clear, it's like having a personalized roadmap to success.
Can you give an example of a non-SMART goal versus a SMART one?
Sure thing. A non-SMART goal would be, I want to get stronger. There's nothing wrong with that desire, but it doesn't give you much direction. A SMART version would be, I will increase my bench press by 15 pounds within the next 8 weeks by following my strength program 3 times per week. See how much more clarity that provides?
That's a great example. The SMART goal specifies exactly what strength increase you're aiming for, how you'll measure it, sets a reasonable target, focuses on something relevant to your interests, and has a deadline.
Exactly. And you know what's fantastic about having measurable goals? The incredible feeling of tracking your progress. I keep a workout journal, and there's nothing more motivating than flipping back a few pages and seeing how far I've come.
I've tried various tracking methods, apps, journals, spreadsheets. What's worked best for you?
I'm actually old school with a paper notebook for my strength training. There's something so satisfying about physically writing down a new personal record. But for running, I use an app that maps my routes and tracks my pace. The best tracking system is whatever you'll stick with consistently.
That's true. And speaking of consistency, it's important that your goals are achievable. I've seen people set wildly unrealistic goals, get discouraged when they can't meet them, and then give up entirely.
Absolutely, but I'd also say don't be afraid to dream big. Just break those big dreams into smaller, achievable milestones. When I first decided I wanted to run a marathon, I didn't start with a 26-mile run. I began with a couched 5K program, then a 10K, a half marathon, and finally the full marathon. Each achievement built my confidence for the next challenge.
Now let's talk about exercise frequency and duration. This is a common question I get from friends just starting out. How often should I work out, and for how long?
Such an important question. And the wonderful news is that the official recommendations are actually quite achievable for most people. According to the current guidelines, adults should aim for at least 150 minutes of moderate intensity aerobic activity or 75 minutes of vigorous activity each week, plus muscle strengthening activities on 2 or more days.
Right, and it's worth explaining what those intensity levels mean. Moderate intensity means your heart rate is elevated and you're breathing harder than normal, but you can still hold a conversation. Think brisk walking or casual cycling.
While vigorous intensity has you breathing hard enough that talking becomes difficult, activities like running, intense cycling, or high-intensity interval training. I actually love mixing both intensities throughout my week. It keeps things interesting and challenges different energy systems.
That's a good approach. And regarding duration, those 150 minutes don't have to happen all at once. You could do 5 30-minute sessions or even break it down further into 10-minute blocks throughout your day if that's what fits your schedule.
Exactly. Fitness doesn't require huge chunks of time. In fact, I started my fitness journey by simply taking 15-minute walks during my lunch break. Before I knew it, those walks became 20 minutes, then 30, and eventually I was jogging part of the time. Small, consistent efforts add up to amazing results.
Let's also touch on weekly planning. I find that scheduling my workouts at the beginning of each week, like actual appointments with myself, dramatically increases the likelihood that I'll follow through.
I do the exact same thing. My workout times go straight into my calendar, and I treat them with the same respect as any other important appointment. Sunday evenings, I map out my entire fitness week. What type of workout I'll do each day, how long it will last, even what I'll wear sometimes.
That level of planning might seem excessive to some people, but it eliminates decision fatigue. You're not wasting energy deciding whether to work out or what to do. You just follow your plan.
And the beautiful thing is how flexible the planning can be. If you know Tuesdays are your crazy busy day, maybe that becomes your rest day or just a quick 15-minute yoga session, there's no perfect schedule, just the one that works for your life and that you can maintain consistently.
For our final segment today, let's talk about creating sustainable fitness habits. Because, let's face it, the world is full of people who start exercise programs with enthusiasm in January and abandon them by February.
Yes, but let's look at the positive side of that. The fact that so many people repeatedly try again shows our inherent understanding that movement is essential for our well-being. We just need to crack the code of sustainability.
That's one way to look at it, Leo. From a psychological standpoint, habit formation follows a pretty consistent pattern. A habit consists of a cue, a routine, and a reward. The cue triggers the behavior, you perform the routine, and then you receive some kind of reward that reinforces the behavior.
I've found that linking exercise to an existing habit works wonders. For instance, I always lay out my running clothes right next to my bed the night before. When I wake up, seeing those clothes is my cue. The run is my routine, and the post-exercise endorphin rush plus my morning coffee afterward is my reward. It's become so automatic I barely think about it anymore.
That's a great example of habit stacking, connecting a new habit to an established one. Another strategy is to remove barriers to exercise. If getting to the gym takes 30 minutes of your 1-hour workout window, you might be better off exercising at home.
Absolutely. I've created a dedicated space in my apartment with just a yoga mat, a few dumbbells, and resistance bands. It's not fancy, but having that space always ready eliminates any excuses about travel time or gym crowds.
What about when motivation inevitably dips? We all have days when we just don't feel like exercising.
That's when the habit really proves its worth. On those less than motivated days, I follow what I call my just 5 minutes rule. I promise myself I'll just do 5 minutes, and if after that I still want to quit, I can. But guess what? Almost every single time, once I start moving, I end up completing my full workout.
That's actually a technique psychologists recommend, lowering the initial hurdle to get started. And finding activities you genuinely enjoy is crucial too. I tried running for years because I thought that's what fit people did, but I was miserable. When I discovered weightlifting, everything changed because I actually looked forward to my workouts.
Exactly. Exercise shouldn't feel like punishment. There are so many ways to move your body: dancing, hiking, swimming, team sports, martial arts, rock climbing. The list is endless. The most effective workout will always be the one you actually want to do.
And social support can be a powerful motivator too, whether it's a workout buddy who's expecting you to show up, a class where the instructor knows your name, or even online communities where you share your progress.
I completely agree. My Saturday morning running group has been life-changing. Even on cold winter mornings when my bed feels extra cozy, knowing Sarah and Miguel are waiting for me at the park gets me moving. Plus, we always get breakfast after a run, which has become the highlight of my week.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground in this first episode. We've discussed the 5 components of fitness, how to start safely, setting SMART goals, exercise frequency and duration, and creating sustainable habits.
It's been absolutely fantastic. I'm already feeling energized just talking about all these positive steps people can take toward better fitness. Remember, every journey begins with a single step, and today could be your day one.
This podcast series is designed specifically to help non-native English speakers feel more confident when talking with pharmacists, understanding medication instructions, and just generally managing their healthcare needs in English.
You know, Claire, I was just thinking about when my cousin first moved here from overseas. He told me he would literally Google Translate everything before walking into a pharmacy because he was so nervous about miscommunication.
Oh, I can totally relate to that. Even though I grew up speaking English, my parents didn't, and I remember translating for them at the pharmacy when I was just a kid. It can be so stressful when it comes to something as important as your health.
Exactly. And that's why we created this series. Today's episode is Pharmacy Basics, starting the conversation where we'll cover essential vocabulary, how to approach the pharmacy counter with confidence, and those important first interactions.
We'll also talk about different types of pharmacies, common services they offer, and some cultural norms you should know about. By the end of this episode, you'll have the building blocks you need to walk into any pharmacy and get started on the right foot.
And the best part is that we're going to keep this conversational and fun. No boring lectures here.
Definitely not. So let's jump right in and start building your pharmacy communication toolkit.
All right, let's start with understanding the different types of pharmacies you might encounter. This is actually really important because they don't all work exactly the same way.
Great point. In most English-speaking countries, you'll typically find three main types of pharmacies: chain pharmacies, independent pharmacies, and in-store pharmacy counters.
Chain pharmacies are probably the most common ones people think of, places like CVS, Walgreens, or Rite Aid in the US, Boots in the UK, or Shoppers Drug Mart in Canada. These are large companies with stores everywhere that all operate pretty similarly.
Then you have independent pharmacies, which are usually smaller, locally owned businesses. I actually prefer these sometimes. There's one near my apartment where the pharmacist knows me by name now. It feels more personal.
That's such a benefit. And then the third type is in-store pharmacies, which you'll find inside larger stores like Walmart, Target, or many grocery stores. They're super convenient if you're already shopping there.
Exactly. And no matter which type you visit, pharmacies today offer so much more than just filling prescriptions. Did you know that many pharmacies now offer vaccination services? I actually got my flu shot at my local pharmacy last year.
I did too. So much quicker than making a doctor's appointment. They also often provide blood pressure monitoring, medication reviews, and some even have clinics with nurse practitioners who can diagnose and treat minor illnesses.
And don't forget about all the health-related products they sell, everything from vitamins and first aid supplies to personal care items and sometimes even basic groceries.
You know what confuses a lot of people? The layout of pharmacies and understanding who does what. Let's talk about that.
Good idea. In most pharmacies, you'll notice there's a counter area at the back or side of the store. That's where you go for anything prescription related. The rest of the store is usually self-service for over-the-counter products.
And speaking of staff, it's important to know the difference between a pharmacist and a pharmacy technician. The pharmacist is the licensed professional who has extensive education about medications, while technicians assist with many tasks but work under the pharmacist's supervision.
That's right. Pharmacists are the ones who review your prescriptions, check for drug interactions, and can answer detailed questions about your medications. If you need specific advice, always ask to speak with the pharmacist.
And we should mention online pharmacies too, since they're becoming more popular. These can be really convenient, especially for regular medications, but make sure you're using a legitimate licensed pharmacy if you go this route.
Absolutely. In the US, look for the VITPS seal, Verified Internet Pharmacy Practice Sites, and always be cautious about sites offering prescription medications without requiring an actual prescription. Those are usually not legitimate.
Great point. Understanding these basics about pharmacy types and services is the first step to navigating them confidently.
Now that we know about different types of pharmacies, let's talk about actually approaching the counter. This can be one of the most intimidating parts if you're not sure about the right phrases to use.
Definitely. And every country has slightly different customs too. In general, though, when you approach a pharmacy counter, the staff will typically greet you with something like, "Hi there, how can I help you today?" Or, "What can I do for you?"
And a simple, clear response works best. Something like, "Hello, I need to fill a prescription," or, "Hi, I'm looking for something to help with allergies."
I remember one time I was picking up a prescription and got completely tongue-tied because I was in a rush. I just stood there saying, about 5 times before finally blurting out medicine pickup. The pharmacist was super nice about it though.
We've all been there, and that brings up a good point. Pharmacy staff deal with people from all backgrounds and language abilities, so don't worry if your English isn't perfect. Being clear is more important than being perfect.
Absolutely. Now, what about when you walk in and aren't sure where to go? Many pharmacies, especially bigger ones, have different counters for dropping off prescriptions, picking them up, or asking questions.
Good point. In that case, you can simply approach any staff member and say something like, "Excuse me, where do I go to pick up my prescription?" Or, "I'm not sure where I should drop this off."
And many pharmacies have queue systems or need to take you in a specific order. You might see signs saying, "Please wait here," or "Take a number." If you're confused, it's perfectly fine to ask, "Should I take a number?" or "Where should I wait?"
Exactly. And when it's finally your turn, you might hear, "I can help the next person," or "Who's next in line?"
One more thing to remember is to be mindful of privacy. Most pharmacies try to maintain some level of privacy for conversations, but sometimes you might need to ask for it. A simple, "Could we speak more privately?" works well.
That's such an important point, Leo. Pharmacy conversations often involve personal health information, so never hesitate to ask for more privacy if you need it.
Absolutely. Being able to open a conversation confidently sets the stage for effective communication about your healthcare needs. Now let's build your pharmacy vocabulary. Understanding key terms will make conversations so much easier.
Yes, let's start with different medication forms. The most common ones are tablets and capsules, which are both types of pills, but they're actually different.
Right? Tablets are compressed powder medications, usually flat and round or oval. Think of aspirin or allergy pills. Capsules are medication powder inside a gelatin shell. They're typically easier to swallow, but have that distinct two-color look.
Then you have liquid medications, which might be called syrups, suspensions, or solutions. Kids' medications are often in liquid form.
Don't forget about topical medications. Those go on your skin, like creams, ointments, or patches. And then there are inhalers for breathing, suppositories that go. Well, you know where those go.
Leo, always keeping it real. But yes, there are many forms. Oh, and understanding dosage is super important too. You'll hear terms like milligrams, mg, micrograms, mcg, and milliliters, ml.
And time-related dosing like twice daily, which is often written as BID on prescriptions, or 3 times daily, which is T. Those are from Latin, actually.
Interesting. I never knew that. Another important distinction is between prescription and over-the-counter medications. Prescription meds require a doctor's authorization, while over-the-counter or OTC medications can be purchased without a prescription.
That's right. And even within those categories, you should know some common medication types like antibiotics, anti-inflammatories, antihistamines for allergies, analgesics for pain relief.
And don't forget about basic pharmacy supplies, things like bandages, though some people call them plasters in the UK, or adhesive bandages, or even Band-Aids, which is actually a brand name that's become generic, like Kleenex for tissues.
Exactly. Other common items include thermometers, heating pads, ice packs, compression bandages, all those things you might need for first aid or home care.
You know what's funny? I used to get so confused between antihistamines and decongestants when I had allergies. I'd always buy the wrong thing. Learning these terms really helps you get exactly what you need.
Absolutely. Building this vocabulary is like creating your own personal toolkit for health communication. It really does make a big difference.
Now, let's talk about expressing your basic medication needs. This is where you'll use that vocabulary we just discussed to actually get what you need.
Exactly. Let's start with filling a new prescription. You might say something like, "I'd like to fill this prescription, please," while handing over your prescription paper, or "My doctor sent in a prescription for me. My name is," your name.
And if you're looking for an over-the-counter medication, you could say, "I'm looking for something to help with my headache," or "Can you recommend something for a sore throat?"
Those are perfect examples. And when discussing how often you take medication, you'll use phrases like once a day, twice daily, or every 4 hours. The pharmacist might ask, "How often do you take this medication?"
Sometimes you might also need to express urgency. If you really need your medication quickly, you could say, "I'm completely out of this medication. How soon could I get it?" Or, "I need this today if possible."
But be careful not to sound demanding. Pharmacy staff are usually doing their best to help everyone. Speaking of which, I had this experience last month where I really needed my medication before a trip, and instead of getting frustrated, I just explained my situation calmly. They actually rushed it for me.
That's a great approach. Being polite while clearly stating your needs usually gets the best results. And remember to confirm your understanding of instructions. You might say something like, "So I take 1 pill in the morning and 1 at night, is that right?"
Absolutely. Repeating back instructions is one of the best ways to make sure you've understood correctly. It's something I do all the time, even as a native English speaker.
Me too. It's just good practice for everyone. And don't be afraid to ask for clarification if you didn't understand something. A simple, "Could you please explain that again?" or "I'm not sure I understood. Could you say that differently?" works well.
Great advice. Being able to clearly express your medication needs is fundamental to getting the right treatment and using it correctly. Let's talk about something that's often overlooked: cultural norms and expectations in pharmacy settings. These unwritten rules can really vary from country to country.
That's so true. Let's start with personal space. In North American and many European pharmacies, people typically maintain about an arm's length of distance when speaking with pharmacy staff. Standing too close might make people uncomfortable.
And volume is important too. Most pharmacy conversations happen at a moderate speaking volume. You want to be heard clearly by the staff person you're talking to, but not so loud that everyone in the store can hear your medical information.
Exactly. Privacy is taken quite seriously in healthcare settings in most English-speaking countries. That's why you'll often see those lines on the floor indicating where to wait, so the person at the counter has some privacy.
And if you feel people are standing too close behind you, it's perfectly acceptable to say something like, "I'll step aside when I'm finished so you can have some privacy too."
That's a nice way to handle it. Now, what about the role of pharmacists? In countries like the US, UK, Canada, and Australia, pharmacists are highly educated healthcare professionals who can offer significant advice, not just hand over medications.
Absolutely. They're trained to answer questions about medications, potential interactions, and even recommend over-the-counter treatments for minor conditions. Don't hesitate to ask them questions. That's part of their job.
I remember when I moved to a new city and didn't have a doctor yet, my pharmacist was so helpful with recommending over-the-counter treatments for my seasonal allergies. I was genuinely surprised by how knowledgeable she was.
They're amazing resources. Let's talk about formality too. In most English-speaking countries, pharmacy interactions are professional, but not overly formal. You can use everyday language, though it's still polite to say please and thank you.
Yes, and most pharmacists and staff will call you by your first name, which might seem casual if you're from a culture with more formal address customs. This isn't disrespectful, it's just the norm in these settings.
One more thing. In many Western cultures, direct eye contact is considered a sign of attention and honesty. It might feel intense if you're not used to it, but pharmacy staff are looking at you to ensure clear communication.
Great point. Understanding these cultural norms can make pharmacy visits much more comfortable and effective. Now for one of my favorite parts. Let's do a practical exercise. We're going to role-play a first-time pharmacy visit so you can practice what we've learned.
This will be fun. I'll play the pharmacist and you can be someone visiting a new pharmacy for the first time. Ready?
Ready! Enroll as customer. Excuse me, I'm new to this area and need to fill my prescription.
As pharmacist. Hi there. Welcome to our pharmacy. I'd be happy to help you with that prescription. Have you been to our pharmacy before?
No, this is my first time here. I just moved to this neighborhood last week.
Welcome to the area. We'll need to set up your information in our system. Do you have your prescription with you?
Yes, I do. Here it is. And I have my ID and insurance card as well.
Perfect, thank you. I'll just need some basic information from you. Could I get your full name, date of birth, and address, please?
My name is Maria Rodriguez, born May 15th, 1985. My address is 123 Maple Street, apartment 4B.
Thank you, Maria. And what's a good phone number where we can reach you if there are any questions about your prescription?
My cell phone is 555-123-4567. Can you tell me how long it will take to fill this prescription?
We should be able to have this ready in about 30 minutes. Would you like to wait or come back later?
I'll come back in about an hour. Also, do you offer automatic refills for regular medications?
Yes, we do offer that service. We can set that up for you today. When your refill is ready, we'll send you a text message. Would you be interested in that?
That sounds very convenient. Yes, please set that up for me. Thank you for your help.
Back to normal? And that's a typical first interaction. You provided your basic information, asked relevant questions about services, and established yourself as a new customer.
Back to normal. Exactly. Notice how I kept my responses clear and direct, but also polite. And I made sure to ask about services that might be helpful for me in the future.
You also handed over your ID and insurance information without being asked, which is always appreciated at pharmacies. Being prepared saves everyone time.
That's a great tip. Having your ID and insurance card ready, along with any questions you want to ask, makes that first visit go much smoother.
Absolutely. And remember, if you're nervous about your English, you can always practice what you want to say beforehand. Many people do this, even native speakers, when they're discussing something important.
Definitely. Role-playing like we just did is a perfect way to build confidence before your actual pharmacy visit.
Well, we've covered so much ground in this first episode. Let's recap the key points we've discussed today.
We started by talking about different types of pharmacies, chain pharmacies, independent pharmacies, and in-store pharmacy counters, and the various services they offer beyond just filling prescriptions.
Then we discussed how to approach the pharmacy counter with confidence, including common greetings and phrases you might hear or use when starting a conversation.
We also built a solid foundation of pharmacy vocabulary, covering medication forms, dosage terminology, and common pharmacy supplies.
And we learned how to express our basic medication needs clearly, whether you're filling a prescription or looking for over-the-counter recommendations.
We explored cultural norms in pharmacy settings too, which I think is so important for feeling comfortable and understood.
And finally, we put it all together with our practical exercise of a first-time pharmacy visit. I hope that gives everyone a template they can adapt for their own situations.
Absolutely. And remember, pharmacists and pharmacy staff interact with people from all backgrounds and language abilities every day. They're used to answering questions and clarifying information, so don't be afraid to ask if you don't understand something.
That's such an important point, Clara. Your health is too important to leave room for misunderstandings.
Speaking of health, in our next episode, we'll be talking about describing symptoms and health concerns, which is essential when you're looking for the right over-the-counter medication or deciding if you need to see a doctor.
Yes! We'll cover vocabulary for different body parts and common ailments, of how to describe pain and discomfort accurately, and ways to explain allergies and sensitivities clearly. It's going to be super practical.
I'm really looking forward to it, and we'd love to hear from our listeners.
Today marks the beginning of something truly special, a podcast that combines nutrition education with language learning. It's like getting two incredible benefits in one delicious package.
That's right, Leo. Throughout this series, we'll be breaking down nutritional principles, talking about meal planning, portion control, and sustainable cooking methods, all while teaching relevant English vocabulary and expressions.
And the best part is that no matter where you are in your English learning journey, we're designing this to be accessible and conversational. We want everyone to feel welcome here.
Today's episode is called Foundations of Healthy Eating, where we'll introduce basic nutritional concepts and essential food-related vocabulary.
Oh, I love foundations. They're what everything else is built on. Without a good foundation, nothing stands strong, whether it's a house, a relationship, or your health. I've been looking forward to this all week.
Let's start with our first segment, Understanding the Food Plate. I think it's important to discuss the 5 main food groups that make up a balanced diet.
Absolutely. The 5 food groups are like the superheroes of nutrition. Each one brings something special to the table. We've got fruits, vegetables, grains, protein, and dairy. Together, they form an unstoppable team that keeps our bodies running at their best.
That's a unique way of looking at it, Leo. According to the United States Department of Agriculture, or USDA, they've created a visual representation called My Plate to help people understand balanced meals.
Oh, I love that plate image. It makes nutrition so much easier to understand. You can actually see that vegetables and grains should take up slightly more space on your plate than fruits and proteins. Visual learning for the win.
Exactly. And did you know that according to the Mayo Clinic, nutrition basics really come down to eating wholesome foods that support your health? It seems simple, but many people struggle with this concept.
Well, of course. In our busy lives, it's so easy to grab whatever's convenient. I used to be terrible about this until I started meal prepping on Sundays. Now my refrigerator is like a colorful gallery of healthy options just waiting for me.
Speaking of colorful, there is a concept called eating the rainbow that encourages us to consume fruits and vegetables of different colors to get a variety of nutrients. Could you explain why that's important, Leo?
I'd love to. Each color in fruits and vegetables represents different vitamins, minerals, and antioxidants. Red tomatoes have lycopene, orange carrots have beta-carotene, green spinach has iron and folate, blueberries have anthocyanins. It's nature's way of packaging nutrients in beautiful, colorful wrappers. I try to count how many colors I eat each day. It's like a little game I play with myself.
Now let's discuss some common measurements and portions in English that you might encounter in recipes or nutritional guidelines. For example, cup, ounce, tablespoon, teaspoon.
Oh yes. These can be tricky if you're new to English or American recipes. I remember when I first started cooking from English recipes, I was so confused about what an ounce was. But now I know that a cup is about 240 milliliters, an ounce is around 28 grams, a tablespoon is 15 milliliters, and a teaspoon is 5 milliliters. See? Not so scary after all.
That's helpful, Leo. And speaking of portions, the USDA plate model suggests that vegetables and fruits should make up half your plate, grains should be about a quarter, and protein another quarter.
I find that visualization so useful. And you know what's amazing? This guidance seems to be consistent across many cultures, even if the specific foods differ. When I visited Japan last year, I noticed their traditional meals often follow a similar balance, just with different ingredients. It's like the whole world instinctively knows what our bodies need.
You traveled to Japan, I didn't know that, but you're right. Many traditional food cultures naturally developed balanced eating patterns. Let's move on to our next segment, Macronutrients Explained Simply. Macronutrients are the nutrients our bodies need in large amounts: proteins, carbohydrates, and fats. Let's break down what each one does for us.
I love macronutrients. They're like the 3 musketeers of nutrition, all for one and one for all. Proteins are the building blocks that repair our muscles and tissues. Carbohydrates give us energy for our daily activities. And fats, contrary to what people used to think, are essential for brain health, hormone production, and absorbing certain vitamins. They're all incredible.
You're enthusiastic today, Leo. But yes, that's correct. Proteins can be found in foods like meat, fish, eggs, beans, and nuts. Carbohydrates are in foods like bread, pasta, rice, fruits, and vegetables. And healthy fats are found in avocados, nuts, seeds, and olive oil.
And don't forget about those amazing fatty fish like salmon and mackerel. They're packed with omega-3 fatty acids that are fantastic for heart and brain health. I try to eat fish at least twice a week. My grandmother lived to be 97 and she ate sardines almost every day. Maybe that was her secret.
That's a good point. Now, let's discuss how to balance these macronutrients on your plate. A general guideline is to aim for about 10 to 35% of calories from protein, 45 to 65% from carbohydrates, and 20 to 35% from fats.
I find it easier to think about it in terms of my plate rather than percentages. Like, I make sure I have a good protein source, maybe the size of my palm, some whole grains or starchy vegetables taking up about a quarter of my plate, and lots of colorful vegetables for the rest. Then I add some healthy fats like olive oil, avocado, or nuts. Simple and balanced.
That's a practical approach, Leo. And speaking of practical, there's an English food idiom related to health. An apple a day keeps the doctor away. It suggests that eating healthy foods regularly can prevent illness.
Oh, I love that one. And it's true. Apples are packed with fiber and antioxidants. My mom used to say that to me every morning when she packed one in my lunchbox. Thanks to her, I still eat an apple almost every day. Old habits die hard, as they say.
Let's move on to our next segment, building a balanced meal. We've talked about the elements of a nutritionally complete meal, but let's get more specific with a practical formula.
Yes. This is where rubber meets the road, actual meal creation. I find the simplest formula is filling half my plate with vegetables, a quarter with protein, and a quarter with whole grains. It's so straightforward, but makes such a difference in how I feel after eating.
That's exactly the formula recommended by many nutritionists. And speaking of whole grains, according to our research, it's better to choose whole grains for your grain portions. For example, wheat bread instead of white bread.
Absolutely. Whole grains still have all their natural fiber and nutrients intact. I switched to whole grain bread years ago, and honestly, now white bread tastes like eating cotton candy to me. Just pure sugar with no substance. My taste buds completely changed once I got used to the heartier flavors of whole foods.
Let's talk about some vocabulary for meal composition and preparation. We have terms like balanced, nutritious, wholesome, hearty, and nourishing to describe healthy meals.
Those are great descriptive words. And for preparation methods, there's steamed, roasted, grilled, sautéed, and raw. I personally love roasting vegetables. It brings out the natural sweetness in them. Brussels sprouts transformed from my most hated food to one of my favorites once I discovered roasting.
That's a good point about cooking methods. Some methods are healthier than others. For example, steaming vegetables helps retain more nutrients than boiling them.
So true. And grilling or baking meats instead of frying them reduces unnecessary added fats. It's amazing how the same ingredients can become either health-promoting or less healthy just based on how we prepare them. Such a simple change with big impacts.
Now let's explore our next segment, healthy eating around the world. Different cultures have developed their own balanced nutrition patterns over centuries.
This is my favorite topic. The world is like this amazing tapestry of food traditions, and so many cultures figured out balanced nutrition long before nutritional science existed. The Mediterranean diet with its olive oil, fish, and fresh vegetables, Japanese cuisine with fish, rice, and pickled vegetables, Indian food with its amazing spices and lentils. I could go on forever.
Let's introduce some international food vocabulary. For example, in Mediterranean cuisine, we have hummus, tahini, falafel, and couscous. In Asian cuisines, there's tofu, kimchi, miso, and edamame.
And don't forget about quinoa from South America, a complete protein source. Or garam masala spice blend from India that makes vegetables taste incredible. I actually learned to cook Thai food during lockdown in 2020. Making a green curry from scratch seemed intimidating at first, but now it's one of my go-to weeknight meals.
That sounds delicious. What's interesting is how different cultures balance their nutrition. For example, in Japan, they often serve small portions of multiple dishes to ensure variety. In the Mediterranean, they use olive oil as their primary fat source.
Exactly! And in Mexico, beans and corn together create a complete protein. It's like our ancestors intuitively figured out perfect food pairings. I think we can learn so much from traditional food cultures instead of always chasing the newest diet trend. These patterns have sustained people for generations.
Let's talk about some expressions about cultural food practices. In English, we say breaking bread together to describe sharing a meal with others, which highlights the social aspect of eating.
I love that expression. Food really brings people together across every culture. In my family, Sunday dinners were sacred. No matter how busy everyone was, we all gathered around the table. Those are some of my most cherished memories. The connection over food is as nourishing as the food itself.
That's a nice sentiment, Leo. Now let's move to our final segment, daily habits for better nutrition. What are some simple routines people can implement to improve their eating habits?
Start with breakfast. It really is the most important meal of the day. It kickstarts your metabolism and gives you energy for the morning. Even something quick like yogurt with fruit and nuts, or a slice of whole grain toast with avocado can make a huge difference. I'm a disaster if I skip breakfast. Just ask anyone who's encountered me before my morning meal.
Let's introduce some vocabulary for meal timing. Breakfast is the morning meal, brunch is a late morning meal that combines breakfast and lunch, lunch is the midday meal, dinner is the evening meal, and snacks are small amounts of food eaten between meals.
And don't forget supper. Some regions use it interchangeably with dinner. I think regular meal timing is so helpful for maintaining energy throughout the day. My grandmother always said, eat breakfast like a king, lunch like a prince, and dinner like a pauper. There's wisdom in front-loading your calories.
Another important aspect of nutrition is hydration. The Mayo Clinic suggests that adequate water intake is essential for overall health. Water helps transport nutrients to your cells and removes waste products from your body.
Water is the unsung hero of nutrition. I carry my reusable water bottle everywhere. It's practically attached to me at this point. I found that adding a slice of lemon or cucumber makes water more interesting if you're not a fan of plain water. Staying hydrated has improved my skin, energy levels, and even helped with headaches I used to get.
There's an expression in English related to eating habits. You are what you eat. It suggests that the food you consume affects your health and well-being.
That expression really is true. When I was in college, I lived on instant noodles and energy drinks for a while, and I felt absolutely terrible. Now that I focus on whole foods, I have so much more energy and clarity. Your body literally builds new cells from the nutrients you provide it, so choose wisely.
According to our research, an easy first step to eating healthy is to include fruits and vegetables at every meal and snack. The Heart Association recommends adding color to your meals through a variety of fruits and vegetables.
Yes, that's what I was saying earlier about eating the rainbow. I challenged myself to include at least one fruit or vegetable in every meal and snack. Even if I'm having something less nutritious, adding some berries or carrot sticks helps balance it out. Small changes add up to big results over time.
As we wrap up today's episode, let's recap the key points we've covered. We talked about the 5 main food groups: fruits, vegetables, grains, protein, and dairy. We discussed macronutrients, proteins, carbohydrates, and fats, and how to balance them on your plate.
We also explored that wonderful formula for building a balanced meal. Half your plate with vegetables, a quarter with protein, and a quarter with whole grains. And we traveled the world to see how different cultures approach balanced nutrition. What an incredible journey in just one episode.
And we discussed simple daily habits for better nutrition, like eating regular meals, staying hydrated, and including fruits and vegetables at every meal.
I feel so inspired after this conversation. Nutrition doesn't have to be complicated. It really comes down to eating wholesome foods that support your health, just like the Mayo Clinic says. Anyone can take small steps toward better eating habits, and those small steps add up to big changes over time.
Exactly. And remember, as the Mayo Clinic advises, if you want to go beyond the basics, it's always good to talk to a healthcare professional, such as a dietitian who can provide personalized advice.
That's such important advice. We're all unique individuals with different needs and goals. What works for me might not work for you. A professional can help you navigate your specific nutrition journey in a way that's sustainable and enjoyable.
I hope you found it both informative and helpful for expanding your English vocabulary.
I had such a blast recording this with you, Clara.
We'll also cover time-saving strategies and budget-friendly approaches to healthy eating, because eating well shouldn't break the bank or take up your entire day.
Absolutely. I can't wait to share some of my favorite meal prep tips that have saved me countless hours and dollars over the years. It's going to be another episode packed with practical advice and useful language.
Thank you for listening to Daily Nourish. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with friends who might benefit from improving both their nutrition knowledge and English skills.
And remember, every small positive change to your eating habits is a victory worth celebrating. Until next time, this is Leo.
And Clara wishing you happy, healthy eating.